Let's look at some other APIs. Now, some of them that you encounter will have these CORS errors. So this one in particular, the quotes on design, doesn't work very well within local, and you have to use the JSON+AJAX+API format here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this and build this out on CodePen. I've stripped away a lot of what we had earlier within the application, and I've brought in random user. So let's quickly look through this API, and then we'll jump into CodePen. So we see that we're returning information back in results. So refresh, and results is where the content is that we're looking at. And the same thing with the trivia database, that we can break it down into data, results, and then this is where all that information is that we're after. So we can really easily select any piece of this information and then output it and make use of it. So we could do something like the name, that first name, so we could do name and first, and plus, space, space, plus, and then the same thing again, but this time writing out last. And just save that. So now within the console, we get some random people's names. So it's as easy as that to work with different APIs. And as mentioned, we want to look at the quote database. And this one is a little bit more tricky when we're doing it within local. So we can't really easily bring in the quote information. That one's actually in a function. So we can see it when we go into the browser. So when we do this, we see that we get random quotes, but if I was to take that same URL, and if we just console log out the data, I'll comment this one, and we'll rewrite it there. So if we console log out the data, we're going to run into a CORS error. And we got to just add in that quote, so refresh. And we see that what we're running into is this no access control header problem. And even if we try to parse it out as JSON, we can see that we're still going to run into a problem. So let's bring this over into CodePen. So open up CodePen. So CodePen is really useful as well for practicing with Ajax, because this gets you around a lot of these CORS problems. So, and you can sign up for CodePen. You don't have to pay anything. It's just all of your posts are public. If you do pay, then they will be private. You can set up private posts as well. So I'll just call it Ajax. So let's add all of our HTML. And that's kind of one of the nice things about it is I can copy all of my body information. So I don't have to split it off and put stuff in JavaScript. Of course, there is that option there for the JavaScript as well. So let's see what happens when we click it. And we'll see what we get output into the console. And we need to also update. So this is the API value that we're grabbing. So let's update our URL. Save. And we'll try this out. And we can also use the regular console if we want. And so we're getting this mixed content issue because we're loading insecure data over secure. So that's always not great. So when we get rid of that, we can see that we're actually grabbing the content. So we're getting it within a nice object format. So that took care of that problem. So that's another problem that sometimes you do run into because that's the good thing about CodePen. It's HTTPS. And some of the websites, if you're trying to access them and if they're not secure, then you can run into issues. So you can just simply remove out the HTTP : and just let it send whatever the best format is that it can pick that up. So there we go. So we're all ready to pull that content in and output it in our output area. So let's actually move this all down to JavaScript. And separate it out from our content there. And this is going to allow us to clean that up, to tidy that up. I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'll get rid of the console because we have it down below as well. So great. So we're able to pick up this data. I can get rid of this console log stuff here. And now what we can do is we can simply output that content that we're retrieving back. Let's first get rid of the parsing of JSON, just to see we can take a closer look at actually what's being returned back. So we see that it's being returned back within an array format. So when we parse it out as JSON, we need to just simply return back that first item in the array. So there we go. So now we've got title, content, and we can output content into our output area. And we already have that hooked up. So now it's just as easy as doing inner HTML. And now we know that data, it's an array. So if we want to get the content, we just treat it as an object. So let's see what happens. So there we go. So we can really easily pull in that content. And then, of course, at this point, we can style it and do even more. So we see that it's already got a little bit of styling there as well to it. And obviously, you can play around with it, but the main purpose of this lesson was to get more familiar with just different ways of working with APIs, overcoming issues you might have with APIs, especially when you're working on local. You do run into those issues occasionally when you don't have control over what the server and passing in over the JSON data. So sometimes you do run into those CORS, as well as sometimes you run into those HTTP errors as well. So go ahead, try this out for yourself. I'm going to go ahead and save this pen so you can go online and you can work with it and try it out for yourself.